you for getting out of bed so early to come into the event. For how many of you is English your first language? Well, undecided. For how many of you is it your second language? About half of you. Third language, anybody? Wow. Okay, so I'm from Newcastle. No, not Sunderland. We hate people from Sunderland. I'm from Newcastle, which is the right side of the river, right side of the right river. And so English is a second language for me as well. So what I want to do before I start, for those of you who, many of you will speak English better than me, but we English say some things that we don't always actually mean. So I've just got a couple of slides I want to share with you, if I can get this to work. Okay, the slides don't seem to be coming up. Here we go. So, this is what we say, and this generally is what people think we mean. So if I say with the greatest respect, you think, I appreciate what you say. Well, the reality is somewhat different. If I say, when you ask me a question at the end of this, hopefully you will, and I say, well, with the greatest of respect, you know exactly what I mean. And when I'll be talking to some of you out in the coffee area afterwards, and you present your brilliant new app idea to you, and I say that's a very brave proposal, you will know exactly what I mean by that. So just so you have a sense of what I say is, I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, like us and the Americans, we're two countries separated by a common language. So it's just so you understand what some of the things I'm going to say. What I want to do is just really talk about three things. I want to talk about me, which is my favorite subject, would probably take about 25 of the 30 minutes allocated to me. Then in the 5 remaining moments, I'll talk a little bit about the subject matter that Rob gave me, which is how do you future-proof your business? And then I just want to finish with a little bit on what I see as one of the key challenges of innovation. Because I think most people want to be innovative in what they do, but it is not without its challenges, and I'll come on to that in a second. So a little bit about me, hopefully not 25 minutes. Marketer by background, entrepreneur, I guess, in the sense that I've started a number of businesses. As Rob alluded to, I've started 2 banks in the UK. One is called Metro Bank, started 10 years ago, which is a branch-based bank, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. Then Atom Bank, which is the first digital bank to be launched in the UK, delivered via an app. I, until recently, chaired a national charity, the National Skills Academy for Financial Services. And I just want to take a moment to mention this because I think charitable work's really, really important. And the National Skills Academy does 2 things. It works in the financial services industry. It helps people who otherwise wouldn't get jobs in financial services to get jobs. And it provides financial education. And I guess if you're all in financial services, you'll have a sense of why financial education is important. But let me just mention one thing which got me involved in it, which I believe in very passionately. In the UK, which is where the charity is based, the vast majority of people who are abused are women. Men get abused, but the vast majority of people who are abused are women. And the reason women stay with their abuser is because they control them financially. And if we can educate women about better understanding of financial issues, how to manage their money better, we can break that cycle of dependence. And given you are all in this industry, or here to get out of the rain, one or the other, for those of you who are in this industry, you can help break that cycle of dependency. I do some academic work. I was visiting professor at London Metropolitan University for 3 years, and I'm currently the visiting professor of enterprise and innovation at Newcastle Business School. And last but not least, I've just finished a book on the marketing of financial services, which is coming out in April. I would commend it to you. I think I make 70 cents on every copy it sells, and they think it's going to sell about 3,000. So, you know, it's a difference between poverty and luxury in my retirement, those $2,000. So I recommend you all buy a copy. Okay, Metro Bank. So Metro Bank, we opened in the UK in 2010 with one location. And I know this is a kind of old school style bank. This was sort of pre-digital banking. But it was interesting in the sense that it was tackling a problem most of you are going to approach, which is how do you enter a category, a sector, where there are some really big beasts who've got the funds and the ability to make your life very, very difficult. Bear in mind, we launched in the UK a bank with one branch. And people said, you're crazy. We changed banking with one branch. And the reason we changed banking was this. Because we put the customer first in a way that other banks didn't. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But we looked at, remember I said I was a marketer by background? Very, very simple marketer. I tend to look at market data to find an insight to drive an opportunity. And the insight back in 2007, when I first looked at doing this, was what people wanted from their bank was value, and the banks perceived this simply to mean price. So they tried to make the lowest cost loans, the highest rate on your interest. But in fact, when you look at what people want, the data tell us today, people want value from their banks. And value is an amalgam of a number of different things. So price is important, but in the UK, the US, and Australia, only 13% of people choose their bank because of rate. Everybody else chooses it for different reasons. So service, convenience, transparency, consistency. People hate it when, as a customer, and they think a loyal customer of a business, a new customer gets a better deal. I hate it when my telecoms company gives a new customer a better deal. I go, that's unfair. I've been with you 20 years. Why am I being penalized for being a good customer? So in Metro Bank, we said nobody gets paid. Sorry, in Metro Bank, we said nobody gets a better product than an existing customer. In terms of convenience, we said, when do you want a bank? People said, well, in the morning on my way to work, in the evening on my way home, but weekends, typically when banks are closed. So we said, we'll open 7 days a week. We'll open from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. We'll open on Saturdays and Sundays. And it went from one branch to today, it's over 50, and it's got a market cap, I think, of about roughly 30 billion Hong Kong dollars. So it's done okay. But anyway, the two things I'm most proud of is that 9 out of 10 customers say they're very satisfied, or better than that, with the service they receive. And 8 out of 10 would refer Metro Bank to a friend, which is critical in growing customer numbers, because advocacy is what drives those customer numbers. We introduced a few other things which differentiated us from the marketplace, and differentiation is something I want to come back to in a moment. One of the key things was that in the UK, all the banks say, we put the customer first. You, our customer, are our priority. And then you look at the way they reward the people who serve you, and the person who greets you at the door, the person behind the desk, the person behind the counter, get paid about 1/3 of their income as a commission for selling you something. And I go, how can you say you put the customer first and then reward your staff for selling people things? It's non-concomitant of giving great service. If you want to give great service, reward people for giving great service, not for selling things. So in Metro Bank, every single person who faced the customer had one target and one target only, which is customer satisfaction. That's what they were bonused on, how well they served the customers, as an individual, as a branch, as a bank. And that is the only thing we rewarded people for. And that's what led to these very high levels of customer satisfaction. Atom Bank. Has anybody heard of Atom Bank? A few of you. Great. I am very proud to say that I was the founder and the chairman of Atom Bank. Some of you might have heard that I stepped down as chairman last week. I remain an absolute supporter of it and a quite big shareholder, so I'm quite keen to see it do well as it goes forward. It started with 6 of us. 2 of us in the front row, 2 at the back. 6 of us in 2004 with an idea. Now, in fact, there's over 300 of my colleagues. We got a market cap of about 28 billion Hong Kong dollars, and a balance sheet. We grew from 0 to about $10 billion over the course of the last year. First bank to be delivered via mobile devices, tablets or phones, and it seems to be working quite well. And you go, well, why is this? Well, I'll come on to that in a second. It's ranked by KPMG as number 6 in the top 10 fintechs in the world. There's a research company called BDRC who did a piece of research amongst 20,000, a base of 20,000, which normally I would say is a statistically spurious number. You wouldn't take the output of a research base of 20,000 as nationally representative. But given they said we were the most recommended bank in the UK, I'm very proud to say I think it's a very fine piece of research, and I would commend it to you. Quite poor ratings in the app stores, about 2.5. It seems to be that app store ratings can be influenced by other people who don't necessarily have your best interest at heart. But research amongst our customers via Revu shows that we score more than 9 out of 10 from those who use us as a bank. You might have heard that about 18 months ago, I recruited will.i.am as a strategic advisor to the board of Atom. And you go, well, why? And it's quite funny, actually. I was sitting at home one Friday afternoon. I'll say late afternoon because I was having a glass of wine. And I was playing a game that... Are there any marketers in the room? Anybody with a marketing background? Yeah, a couple. So for those of you who don't, one of the things we do is you go, if our brand were a person, what kind of person would it be? So what are the anthropomorphic qualities, the human qualities you would attach to your brand? So I was saying Atom, well, it's young, it's a millennial brand. Our route to our market is largely social media. It's about people who have a real understanding of digital. And Will came into mind. I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll put him to one side. Thought a bit more, and I couldn't think of anybody better. So I did a piece of detailed research. I Googled him, and I thought, yeah, everybody knows him, 7 times Grammy Award winner, the most downloaded song ever on the internet, first artist to have a song broadcast from a satellite going around Mars. So big in the music business. But what I didn't realize until I started researching him is he's passionate about digital technology. He has 150 people working in AI in Hollywood, Norway, Singapore, and China. He has a real vision of where technology is going and the role it plays in the lives of millennials. And we recruited him as an advisor to the board about a year ago, and he's been incredible in just giving us a sense of what our audience think and the direction that they're taking. Because, you know, I'm from a bank, and bank boards tend to be sort of middle-aged white blokes like me. I mean, we were quite unusual in Atom because half the board was middle-aged white women. Not quite like me, but so we had a good gender balance, but not much in terms of age balance. And you know, the regulator wants people who have experience and expertise, but if you want to align with your audience, you need people who understand your audience. And he did a great job. I put this photo up for one reason, really, which is I flew into America to do some stuff and to do some photos with Will. And I arrived at immigration in LA. I knew there's always a queue, so I ran to get to the front of the queue. I still knew it was going to be 50 minutes to get through, and I had a car waiting to take me to the meeting. When I got to the front of the queue, they looked in my passport, and I had an Iranian stamp in my passport. I had a couple. And they wouldn't let me in. So I was delayed at immigration for about 7 hours. Will got really bored and went home. But he did his photo shoot without me. And when I got there 7 hours later, they shot me. So that is actually two entirely separate photos. I'm convinced I was there. I look at that and I must have been there, but in fact, I wasn't. Not particularly interesting. You didn't seem to enjoy it, so I'll not tell that one again. Okay, so I was asked to talk a little bit about how do you future-proof your business. My business for the last 10 years has largely been banking. So I'm going to talk from that perspective. But I think hopefully some of the things I talk about will be relevant to you in terms of what you're doing. So if you're going to start a digital bank, what's the key driver behind it? What's the insight that underpinned it? So is there anybody here who doesn't have a mobile phone? No? Okay. So I'm going to share with you a piece of research. It's American research. I have showed it in I think pretty much every continent. And all the results are at least what's on the next couple of slides, and generally more so. So let me start with the first one. What's the first thing on your mind when you wake up in the morning? So, for how many of you is it your bathrobe? No? For how many of you is it the remote control? No? Toothbrush? Hygiene's very important. No. Oh, one person there, toothbrush comes first. For how many of you is it your mobile phone? I would say probably about a third of you. That's the lowest percentage I've seen of doing this anywhere. In America, it was about 70%. In the UK, it's about 70%. In Australia, it's about 85%. I mean, for me, it's my wife. Mainly because she's lying there next to me. It tends to be the first thing I notice when I wake up in the morning, but for some of you, it's clearly your smartphone. Okay, second piece of research. Where is your mobile phone located when you go to sleep at night? How many of you actually have it in another room? Well, about 15 people, maybe. How many of you have it on the nightstand, and eye next to you where you are in bed? Probably going on half, I would say. On the bed? Couple? In your hand? I mean, yeah, So are you saying you have it in your hand or you're just taking a photograph? Or both? Why would you go to sleep with your mobile phone in your hand? It completely defeats me. But the reality is, they are now ubiquitous. They are with us everywhere. They're not phones. I very rarely make phone calls on it. It is a device for transmitting and receiving data, and it's basically a mini computer. Oh yeah, mustn't forget this. So I mentioned I went to Iran, which was wonderful. I was very warmly welcomed, really lovely people. And I spoke at a conference, and it went generally pretty well, apart from one bloke didn't particularly like it that much. So what I'd like to do, with your permission, is take a selfie. Can we get the lights up? Is that possible? Just for a minute. Maybe it isn't. Yeah, can we get the lights up? Brilliant. Thank you. So there's too many of you. I'm going to do you in two groups. Is that all right? So I'll do this group first and then you lot. And what I'd like you to do is just pretend you're really enjoying yourself. Like, this is really good. Okay? So on 3. Oh, no, I'm doing the photos. Okay. On 3. Oops, I've got to get me in there. 1, 2, 3. That's it. That's you enjoying yourself. Cool. Now, I'll do the middle next, and then I'll do you guys. So I was going to say, can you do better than that? It would be impossible not to do better than that. So if you could just pretend you're enjoying yourself, just, here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. The bar's been raised. Let's do you guys. Okay. You are there. Yeah, I know. I'm not very good with technology. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you win. There are no prizes, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with you. It's just for me that I did that. Good. So, where was I? Okay. How many of you are planning to or in the process of starting a business? Yeah, about a quarter. How many of you are thinking about starting a business? Yep, a few more. I just want to touch upon a couple of points before my final point. This is, what's the purpose of business? Why are you starting this business? What is the purpose of creating a business? And this is a quote from Milton Friedman, who's probably one of the great economists of the 20th century. And he said that the purpose of a business is to increase its profit. The sole purpose of business is to increase its profit. Who would agree with that statement? A few of you? Yeah, who would disagree with that statement? So the rest of you are just here because it's warm and dry. Okay, I fundamentally disagree with that. I think the purpose of a business is to give the customer a better product or a better service or a better experience. And if you run your business well, you manage your business efficiently, you will make a profit. Now, profit is important because the people who put up the risk capital, the shareholders, need to be rewarded. The people who work in the business need to be rewarded. You need to retain profits to invest in the growth of your business, and so on. But I believe that is a byproduct of doing something well for the customer. I think the great malaise with most banks today is that they've lost sight of the fact they're there to serve the customer. They just think they're there to make money. The customer has become an afterthought to them. And yeah, I'm getting on a bit, not quite as young as I used to be. I built 2 banks. I've done all right. And you go, well, why work? Well, for me, it's about building something which will outlive me. It's about building, if you like, a monument, something of which I can be proud. This is my son, Felix. If on a scale of capitalist to communist, and you've got sort of Hayek on the right, I'm about there, and you've got Marx on the left, Felix is about there. But despite that, I love him to the moon and stars. And I want something that, you know, when I've gone, he can say, I'm proud that my dad was part of that. It's something of value. And if I'm lucky enough to have grandchildren, that it's something they can go, my granddad was part of that. He's built something of value, of substance. And I think that's one of the key things for me about future-proofing your business, is about how do you differentiate yourself. And I've just got a few thoughts which I'll share with you very quickly before my final thought. You can't differentiate through your business strategy, because anybody can copy that. You know, the moment you've written it, somebody else can adopt it. They can't adopt what you're going to do, but they can adopt what you've done. But you can differentiate through the experience you give your customers. This is an old example, but it holds true today. This is a coin counting machine. So in the UK, if you've got coins and you want to bank them, quick piece of research. How many of you have a jar of coins at home, or some receptacle with coins in? Yeah, virtually all men. How many women have got a receptacle with coins in at home? A couple. This is not a sexist remark. You're not being misogynist about it. Just in my experience, men, I pay for a coffee, go to Starbucks, it's $3. The change goes into there. My wife makes change. You know, she has change and she pays that change. So if you've got change, you want to bank it. The bank says, put it into exactly the right amount. We'll take 100 cents, not 99 cents, not 101 cents. And then we'll charge you for the privilege of banking your money. We said, we'll create a machine. Well, we didn't create it. We bought these machines where you pour your coins in. You get a slip of paper, and they'll be put into your account, or we'll give you it in notes. No charge for doing it. There's a little screen. Maybe you can see that screen. If you're a kid, you can play a game. You can guess how many coins you put in. If you guess within 10%, you win a prize. So the kids all pre-count the coins, put them in, win a prize, which I think is really good for future financial education. The machines cost about $20,000 US, so $200,000. No, sorry. Don't know what it is. Can't work it out. $150,000 Hong Kong. Each machine, dressed up with the game and everything inside it. And they break down quite a lot. They're American machines, and foreign objects cause them to break down. So we have 2 machines in each branch. Do you know what causes them to break down the most? What's the foreign object which makes them break down the most? Coins? Well, they are coin-counting machines. Foreign coins. But no, that doesn't make them break down. They just spit them out. Any other guesses? What do you have in your pocket? You're really hard. Just any guess? What do you have in your pocket other than coins? Phone? Yeah, you probably wouldn't put your phone in, but you could. They're American machines. The biggest cause of them breaking down is bullets. So they cost $20,000. 2 machines, 40,000, 50 stores, £2 million, 20 million Hong Kong dollars just in the customer experience. There's no payback on them at all. So could you imagine going to your boss and going, I want to spend, or your shareholders, your colleagues, and saying, I want to spend a couple of $1 million just on something that's going to improve the customer experience? I think the future going forward is about efficiency. In banking, it's called cost efficiency. It's what are your costs as a proportion of your income. A typical bank in the UK and the US would be 55 to 65% cost income ratio. In Australia, it's a bit lower, it's about 50%, but that's because they have such high income. Their costs are still really terrible. As a mature bank, Atom will have a cost income ratio of less than 25%. So it costs us half what it costs a traditional bank to run itself, which means that we can use those savings to give customers better returns on their savings, lower cost on their rates, and still give anywhere between 8 and 15 points better return to shareholders. Typical bank return is about 10, 12%. I think HSBC's is 10%, which is about the cost of money, so zero returns in real terms. With a very efficient business, you can generate more. You can either give it to your customers or you can give it to your shareholders. Some of you will know BBVA bought about 30% of Atom Bank. The chairman, Francisco Gonzalez, has said that if you are not efficient in the future, you will be dead. So I suppose one way to differentiate yourself going forward is to still be in business. To do that, you need to be efficient. The next thing is to differentiate through culture. You can read the slide. I'm not going to read it out. But I mentioned a big example earlier, which is if you really care about your customers and you put your customers first, create a culture that rewards what you want to achieve. So create a culture that rewards people for giving great service. And this final one is about values. This point I made about why are you in business? Maybe you're just in business to make money. Yeah, go and work for Goldman Sachs. You know, don't create a customer-facing business. And for those of you who work for businesses that are just about making money, go and work somewhere else. Life's too short to work somewhere that doesn't adhere to the value set that you have. And profit, as I say, should be a byproduct, for me, of giving customers a better product or service or experience. Last point I want to make, I'm going to make quite quickly. Innovation. In 1912, Henry Ford was quoted as saying, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. Instead, he invented the Model T Ford. Who would say that the Model T Ford was innovative? Who would say that was a pretty major innovation in 1912? Well, probably about 2/3 of you. I'm not sure I'd agree with that. So here's just a couple of quick thoughts. The Model T Ford had a top speed of 42 miles an hour. What's the fastest a horse can run? About 45 miles an hour. Model T Ford has a range of about 112 miles on a tank of gas. How far can a horse go in a day? Well, it can do more, 120, 130 miles, and it can feed itself as it goes along, so it can keep going. Whereas the problem with the Model T Ford was they invented the car before they invented the gas station. So it was a bit harder to fill that thing. Power. The Model T Ford outputs 42 horsepower. Yeah? Horsepower is a measure of efficiency, of output. How many horsepower does a horse have? 1? Do I have any advance on 1? It sounds pretty logical, doesn't it? 1. It's actually 15. Horse puts out 15 horsepower. Don't ask me, look it up, Google it, it's true. Horse puts out 15 horsepower. So, of course, the Model T Ford is more powerful, but if you put 4 horses together to draw a carriage, they are much more powerful than the Model T Ford. And at the time of the Model T Ford and the horse, there weren't many paved roads. It was very uneven surfaces, shale, gravel, hills, rivers to cross. So the car was actually pretty inefficient. And it was expensive, a lot more than a horse. So you go, actually at the time, it just didn't seem that different. It didn't seem that innovative. Now if you go forward a short period of time, suddenly of course now the car is infinitesimally better than a horse at all of those things. It is faster, greater range, more powerful, more comfortable, can scale all terrains that a horse could do. And indeed, the only reason you'd have a horse today is if A, you like riding them, or B, you're French and you like eating them. Otherwise, you would have a car rather than a horse. But at the time, it just didn't look very innovative. And I think this is one of the challenges we have facing us in the financial services industries. We are doing things, some of which are incredibly innovative, but to other people, they just look, well, I can get more or less that right now. So for those of you doing innovative things, you've just got to bear through this. You go through this period, and it will very quickly become apparent that you have a car as opposed to other people's horses. And that's pretty much it, really. I'm going to finish with my final thought, which is a quote. I've had some ups and downs in business. We might cover a couple of them in the Q&A. But I think it's a great quote from Winston Churchill that success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And I wish you every success in the continuation of your businesses. Thank you very much.
Right. Very much. Thank you. Great talk.
I'll leave that there.
Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you.
Inspiring words here for the startups that are here, certainly. I guess every big business starts as a small business at some point, so there's lots of pitfalls along the way. We've got Jame Diblasio here from DigFit, from Hong Kong itself, who's going to ask some questions with Anthony and hopefully go a bit deeper on some of the topics. Over to you, Jame.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody. Anthony, thank you so much that was a really cool presentation. And we're going to talk about some of the ups and downs and try to give our audience a little more insight into what it is like to be a challenger, an entrepreneur, a winner and a loser. You talked about, just so DigFin is something I set up with one partner just last year. I've been in Hong Kong for 21 years as a fairly traditional financial journalist. DigFinGroup.com is covering digital transformation in financial services. You can check it out. Please look at our content if you haven't seen it already. It's there to help you understand who's doing what. So, Anthony, you talked about heritage, you talked about legacy, and then your final quote was Churchill about the courage to continue. And while I'm sure you as a person have many interesting chapters ahead, when it comes to Atom Bank, you're at least changing, if not leaving the direct leadership role. So tell us a little bit about that, and I'll have some follow-ons for that.
Okay, so I like building businesses. The happiest I've ever been is when there's 20, 30, 40, 50 of us in a business. You're making decisions on the fly. You are making decisions which will impact on the future of the business. You know everybody and everybody's name. And once you get past 50 people, for me, it's very hard to remember everybody's name and to have that sense of family and continuity. Atom Bank is, there were 6 of us on day one. Today, over 300 people, 10 billion balance sheet, 1.5 billion market cap. So it's time for me to move on and do something else.
How do you judge that time, not so much from your own personal, what you're interested in doing, but also what's right for the business? You're about to close a major funding round.
Yeah.
And are you going to be there to see that through and help implement that? We're talking about a fairly substantial 150 million pounds. It's a big number. How does that relate to you in terms of what you want to do as I'm Anthony and this is my life, versus this is Atom Bank and it might need me or not need me?
Well, I think, the 150 million is just about done. So yeah, I've left, that capital raise is complete. It's got a phenomenal management team, great board of NEDs, some incredibly supportive shareholders. You know, it's past the point of needing me. Yeah, many people would argue it was past the point of needing me a long time ago. Maybe I've hung on too long, but you know, it's now ready. It doesn't need me. My skills are helping it from the get-go. It's now a growing bank. You know, similarly with Metro. Metro is slightly different in the sense that halfway through the development of Metro, it became clear that digital was the future. My board colleagues didn't share that view with me, so I stepped down to create Atom Bank. But Atom is a tremendous bank. It's doing incredibly well, and I remain a very supportive shareholder of it.
What were some of the moments when you were making that transition? I mean, this sounds like this could have been a contentious time when you were dealing with your colleagues at Metro. Can you share one or two experiences particularly for people here who are in the fintech and startup scene? What were one or two of the darkest moments, the moments where you really were tested?
Anybody out there trying to or been out raising money? Anybody out raising capital? That is just the toughest thing. And when we were raising the money for Metro Bank, back in 2008, and we were looking for $100 million, and nobody was interested in the UK. They went, "Are you crazy? You're going to start a bank? You're going to take on Barclays and HSBC? Nah." So we went to America to raise the capital. Road shows, if you've done road shows, they're awful. We started in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Connecticut, Boston. But because the people with money wouldn't see you in that order, you'd be start in Philly, you'd be New York in the morning, Boston in the afternoon, Connecticut in the evening. Awful. 3 weeks of probably 100 meetings. We had commitments to $116 million. And I remember flying home on the Friday night from New York thinking, this is real. You know, raise the money. We're going to launch a bank. And I got a free upgrade from BA. Never happened since. I was sipping my glass of champagne. I was thinking, yeah, it's great. Got home on the Saturday morning. The joke is I told my wife we'd raise the money and she went out to spend it. And on the Monday, Lehman Brothers went bust. And of the $116 million we had committed to on the Friday, 65 million disappeared that week. Some of the companies disappeared that week. And to the point you were just raising with me when we were talking earlier, you know, the temptation just to stay in bed and go, oh, it's just all too difficult. But yeah, you get up and you go to work and you work your way through it.
What was the relationship that you tried to establish with your investors? Because some of them, well, BBVA is a major shareholder.
Yeah.
And how do you try to set the terms when they're very big? And I mean, you have a track record, but nonetheless, you're talking about a quite novel venture.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be realistic about it and say the people with the capital are the ones who determine the basis of the deal. And
so what did you have to give up?
well, we gave them some protected rights because of the amount of capital that they put in. But it's not unreasonable that people who are putting in significant amounts of risk capital. And it depends where you are on the journey. So day one, you have an idea. So I'm going to start a bank. And people go, yeah, that's a good idea. You go out to raise money against nothing more than a business plan. Very, very tough. You get a bit further down the road. You get your team together. It's a bit easier to raise money. You get your license. It's a bit easier to raise money. But then there's still people who go, well, I want to see it de-risked. I want to see it get towards profitability. And if you say that the pool of money available to a startup business is that big, doesn't matter what that is. And you go, okay, so that's the pool of capital we can tap into. You go, well, take out of that those people who won't invest in unlisted stocks or can't because of their mandate. So it shrinks. And you go, okay, take out of those people who won't or can't invest in stocks that are more than 12 months from a liquidity event. Take out those people who won't invest in businesses that are pre-profit. Take out those people who won't invest in businesses that are pre-revenue, and you end up with a really tiny pool of capital and a lot of people chasing it. So, yeah, depending where you are in the cycle depends upon the relationship you have with that provider of capital.
So in your latest round, you were able to set the terms a little more towards what you were looking to do yourselves?
Well, because it's now a successful bank. It's de-risked. I'd say it's got £1 billion, so $10 billion either side of the balance sheet. Still tiny, but we've proved operationally that it works. We've proved that we can take on customers, that it's resilient, that it's got a good operational risk framework. So it's more attractive, but it'll still lose money for another 18 months. There are those investors who go, we're fine with that, and there are other investors who go, we're not coming in until it's making money.
And the proceeds, when you first got the money, what was the core driving immediate priority for the use of the money, and what is it going to be in 2018?
Again, it depends upon where you are in the cycle. So right at the very beginning, it was about the build piece. So it's about creating the infrastructure, recruiting the people. I think it's not easy recruiting people. You go out there and go, I've got a great idea. I'm going to start a bank. You can be the CEO or the CFO or the CRO or whatever, and you'll have options or shares, and you're going to make a load of money out of this. Oh, and by the way, if we don't get licensed, there won't be a job for you. So are you happy to give up your existing big job on, some people take the risk, some people won't take the risk. There's the building out of the infrastructure. The providers of infrastructure want money up front from startup businesses. They're not prepared to give you credit. Then when you get to where we are, it's operationally sound. The challenges are different. People go, can you produce a fast enough return on the money? Is the IRR big enough for the returns we're looking for on our fund? How do you sit in the competitive landscape? What's going to disrupt it?
What's going to be the next step? Because I understand the services that you can offer or have decided to offer as a digital-only bank are limited. You don't do personal current accounts yet, if I understood it correctly.
No, there's two reasons for that. The main reason is the introduction of, in the UK, what's called Payments Services Directive 2, or open banking, which is this ability through APIs to take calls from other banks and provide a consolidated financial picture. There's no question this is the future. I think for us the question is, how long will it take before that is actually live and operable? Because it's supposedly live from the 18th of January, but there's still a lot of legal issues unresolved, a lot of technical issues unresolved.
Yeah, some grace periods.
Yeah. And the second thing is, how do you monetize it? Because ultimately, we have to make money as a bank. I don't think it's right that products are cross-subsidized, that banks subsidize personal checking accounts to get that relationship at the expense of other customers. I think they should stand their own ground. So Atom will introduce one, and Mark Mullen, the CEO, said probably be about 18 months away.
Going back to legacies and monuments, what do you want to happen with Atom Bank in terms of its standing with the new round? If BBVA is going to take a bigger stake, do you see Atom becoming basically BBVA's UK or European digital arm? Do you see it being remaining standalone and perhaps go IPO? Where do you want it to go?
Well, not part of my gift anymore. Nope. But the business plan always said that we would IPO it in or around mid-2019. It will go towards that, but clearly there's always the option of a trade sale, and BBVA is a significant shareholder, may well exercise that right, but I don't know. Either way, it'll be good for shareholders.
Will.i.am, from a technical consultant perspective, tell us a little bit about what he's contributed.
He's not a technician per se. He has an extraordinary vision of the way the world's going and the role technology is going to play in it. Quite extraordinary. Every time I sit down with the guy, I'm more impressed by his vision. You know, he really gets our target audience. He gets millennials, and he understands where they're going. And this is a guy, you know, who started out very poor. It's a great story. In fact, have we got 1 minute to tell a story? 30 seconds to tell a story. So I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm from Newcastle, and you know, very poor upbringing. Will was brought up in South LA, which is like Newcastle but with a bit of sunshine and gangs. And when he formed the Black Eyed Peas and he started to get a little bit of success, he got a royalty check for about $40,000. And he decided he wanted to buy his mum a house. And pan forward about 8 months. He's driving around LA, pulls into a gas station with a friend. Friend opens a glove box. And in it, his friend goes, Will, you've got a whole bunch of checks here. He said, you've got $500,000 worth of checks. What are you doing? He said, I'm saving them to buy my mum a house. And he goes, but you've got to put them in the bank. Will goes, why? He didn't understand that you had to bank checks. He thought you just waited till you had $1 million worth of checks, went to you and gave you the checks and you gave him your house.
That's a wow.
So, you know, the guy really understands what it's like to be a millennial today.
We have to wrap it up, but one last question. You are also an avid collector of guitars, electric guitars. So to leave your audience with just a little personal touch, Anthony, who is your favorite rock or blues band of all time?
Oh.
Yeah, the hard question. Save that one for
Well,
last.
The individual's got to be Jimi Hendrix.
All right.
If I could play guitar like Jimi Hendrix, I would not be sitting here.
Purple Haze. Okay. Thank you very much. Please, a big round of applause for Anthony Thomson.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great work. Thank you.